I've always believed that the future isn't something we rush toward. It's something that slowly walks toward us while we're busy becoming who we are meant to be. And then one day, a thought stops you. Not loudly, not violently, but deeply. The thought of a woman I haven't met yet, my future wife, shook me. Because suddenly love wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was a responsibility, a promise to grow, to heal, to be better than I was yesterday. This isn't just a story about romance. It's about hope. It's about choosing love before it even arrives. And how the idea of one person somewhere in the future can change the way you live today. I didn't meet her. I didn't hear her voice or see her face. There was no moment, no introduction, no spark the way movies promise. It was quieter than that. It happened when I was alone with my thoughts, when life slowed down just enough for something real to slip in. The idea of my future wife entered my mind, and it didn't feel romantic at first. It felt heavy. Not heavy in a bad way. Heavy like truth. Heavy like something you can't ignore once it's there. That thought shook me because suddenly love wasn't just about feeling good anymore. It wasn't about being wanted or understood or held. It was about being ready. And I realized I wasn't just thinking about who she might be. I was being confronted with who I am. I started asking myself questions I had avoided for years. Am I someone worth waiting for? Am I building a life that has room for another person's dreams? If she walked into my life tomorrow, would she find safety or chaos? Would she find peace or unresolved storms I keep pretending are under control? The idea of her didn't flatter me. It challenged me. It exposed the parts of me that still run when things get hard, the parts that shut down instead of speaking, the parts that hold on to pride when humility would heal faster. That's when I understood something important. Loving her someday means I don't get to be careless today. Responsibility isn't a word people like to connect with love. It sounds restrictive. It sounds heavy. But the kind of responsibility I felt wasn't about control or sacrifice in a painful sense. It was about care. It was about showing up even when no one is watching. It was about becoming steady. Because love, real love, doesn't survive on intensity alone. It survives on consistency, on patience, on the quiet choice to do the right thing again and again, even when no one applauds. Thinking about her made me see how often I've chosen comfort over growth. How often I've delayed healing because distraction was easier. And that realization didn't shame me. It woke me up. I imagined her trusting me. Not in a dramatic way, but in the everyday way that actually matters. Trusting me with her fears, with her bad days, with the soft parts of her that the world has been careless with. That image forced me to slow down because trust like that isn't earned by words. It's earned by habits, by character, by how you live when life isn't cinematic. I thought about the weight of being someone's safe place. How can I protect someone else's heart if I'm still at war with myself? The idea of my future wife made love feel less like something that happens to you and more like something you prepare for. It made me realize that romance without maturity is just noise. That passion without discipline burns out. That attraction without intention eventually turns into regret. I've chased feelings before. I've mistaken chemistry for connection. I've ignored red flags because loneliness can be persuasive. But this time was different. This time the thought wasn't about what I would receive from love. It was about what I would bring into it. I started noticing how I speak to people, how quickly I judge, how slowly I forgive. I thought about arguments I've had, moments where I wanted to win instead of understand, moments where I chose silence instead of honesty. And I wondered how those habits would sound in a marriage, how they would echo in a home. Love doesn't erase your patterns, it amplifies them. Whatever you bring into it gets louder. That realization shook me more than the idea of romance ever could. There's a quiet kind of fear that comes with imagining a future wife. Not the fear of commitment, but the fear of inadequacy. The fear of not being enough on the days when love requires more than you feel capable of giving. And instead of running from that fear, I sat with it. Because fear, when you listen closely, often points to responsibility. It tells you what matters. It tells you what you don't want to fail at. And I don't want to fail her, even if I don't know her name yet. Thinking about her made me reflect on time, on how casually I've wasted it, on how many days I've let pass without intention. Love like that doesn't arrive magically. It meets you where you are, and if where you are is undeveloped, unhealed, unfocused, love feels heavier than it needs to be. I don't want to meet her halfway exhausted from avoiding my own growth. I want to meet her standing, grounded, aware of my flaws, but actively working on them. I realize that responsibility. And love isn't about being perfect. It's about being honest. Honest about your limits, honest about your wounds, honest about the work you still need to do. I don't need to become someone else to be worthy of her. But I do need to become more myself, the version of me that doesn't hide behind sarcasm, the version that listens without preparing a defense, the version that stays present even when things get uncomfortable. The thought of her changed the way I look at choices, small ones, the ones that seem insignificant, how I manage anger, how I treat strangers, how I talk about people who aren't in the room. Those things felt suddenly connected to a future I care about. Love stopped being abstract. It became personal, real, demanding in the best way. It asked me to be accountable to a future that doesn't exist yet, but somehow already matters. I understood that responsibility and love also means patience, not rushing into something just to fill space, not forcing connections out of fear of being alone, waiting, not passively, but actively, using the time to become someone who can sustain love instead of just attract it. That kind of waiting isn't empty. It's full of intention, full of discipline, full of quiet decisions that no one claps for. The idea of my future wife shook me because it reframed my life. It took love out of fantasy and placed it into reality, into mornings and disagreements and tired evenings and forgiveness. It made me respect love more. It made me slow down. It made me realize that someday someone will look at me and decide whether I feel like home or like another risk. And that decision will be influenced by who I chose to be long before she arrived. I don't know when I'll meet her. I don't know where life will place us, but I know this. The thought of her turned love into responsibility and responsibility into purpose. It made me want to live more carefully, more intentionally, not out of fear, but out of respect. Because love like that deserves preparation. It deserves effort that starts long before the first hello. Becoming the man before meeting the woman sounds simple when you say it quickly, almost motivational, almost like something you'd write down and forget by the end of the day. But when I actually sat with it, when I let it settle into my chest, I realized how uncomfortable that idea really is. Because it doesn't ask who she will be. It asks who I am choosing to become when no one is asking me to. It removes the excuse of timing. It removes the fantasy that love will arrive and magically fix the parts of me I've been postponing. I used to think becoming someone happened after love. That growth was a reaction. That commitment forced maturity. But the thought of my future wife flipped that idea completely. It made me see that love doesn't build character from nothing. It reveals what's already there, and whatever is unfinished in me will show up in the relationship whether I wanted to or not. So the question stopped being when will I meet her and turned into would I recognize myself as worthy if I did. There's a quiet loneliness in working on yourself without an audience, without reassurance, without someone promising it will all be worth it. Becoming the man before meeting the woman means choosing discipline on days when motivation doesn't show up. It means sitting with discomfort instead of numbing it. It means admitting that some of the habits I've normalized are actually ways of avoiding responsibility, avoiding presence, avoiding depth. And that kind of honesty is exhausting because it doesn't let you hide behind potential anymore. I started thinking about the version of me that would show up in a marriage. Not the version on good days, not the version that's charming and confident when everything is going right. The version that comes home tired, the version that's misunderstood, the version that's wrong and has to admit it. That's the man she would live with. And I had to ask myself if that man is someone I'm proud of yet. Not perfect, just accountable. Just steady enough to hold space without needing to be the center of it. Becoming the man before meeting the woman also meant redefining strength. It's easy to confuse strength with control, with emotional distance, with never needing help. But real strength is staying open even when life has taught you to close off. It's learning how to communicate instead of disappearing. It's choosing calm over ego in moments where winning an argument feels more satisfying than protecting connection. Those are not traits you download when love arrives. Those are skills you practice long before anyone benefits from them. I noticed how often I postpone growth by telling myself, I'll do better when the time is right. When I'm older, when life slows down, when someone inspires me enough. But the truth is, the time is right when you decide it is. No relationship deserves the leftover version of you. No future wife deserves to inherit the emotional mess you refuse to clean up just because no one was there to witness it. Becoming the man before meeting the woman is about respect. Respect for her time, respect for her energy, her trust, her life. There's also grief in this process, grief for the versions of myself I have to let go of, the reckless one, the distracted one, the one that hides behind humor instead of vulnerability. Growth isn't just adding better habits, it's shedding identities that no longer fit. And sometimes those identities were built to protect you. Letting them go feels like standing exposed. But love requires exposure. Not all at once, not recklessly, but honestly. And honesty starts long before love has a face. I thought about leadership not in a dramatic sense, but in the quiet way leadership shows up in partnership. Being someone who can take responsibility without being asked. Someone who can listen without interrupting. Someone who doesn't see emotions as problems to solve, but as realities to respect. Those qualities don't come from confidence alone. They come from self-awareness, from knowing your triggers, from knowing when to pause. And self-awareness doesn't arrive with marriage. It's developed in solitude. Becoming the man before meeting the woman also means learning how to be alone without becoming isolated. There's a difference. Isolation hardens you. Solitude refines you. Solitude gives you space to hear your own thoughts without running from them. It forces you to confront your patterns, your fears, your expectations of love. And in that quiet, you begin to realize that love isn't supposed to complete you. It's supposed to complement a life that's already moving with intention. I started paying attention to how I treat commitments. Small ones, the promises I make to myself and break when no one is watching. Those habits don't disappear in relationships. They scale. If I can't be consistent with my own goals, my own values, my own growth, how can I expect to be consistent for someone else? Becoming the man before meeting the woman means becoming trustworthy first to yourself. Integrity isn't built in grand gestures, it's built in repetition. There's a humility required in this process. Accepting that I don't know everything, that I still have blind spots, that I will make mistakes even with the best intentions. But humility also creates room for learning, for feedback, for growth without defensiveness. A future wife doesn't need a man who is always right. She needs one who is willing to reflect, to adjust, to apologize without justifying himself. Those are muscles you build through conscious effort, not through romance. I realized that becoming the man before meeting the woman isn't about rushing to become some ideal version. It's about direction, about choosing a trajectory that aligns with the kind of partnership I want to create. A life that has room for two people to grow without competing. A relationship where love feels like support, not survival. That kind of future doesn't happen accidentally. It's built quietly daily in choices that seem unrelated until one day they aren't. There's also courage involved. Courage to say no to connections that don't align with where you're going. Courage to wait when impatience whispers that anything is better than nothing. Courage to be misunderstood while you're becoming. Growth isn't always attractive in the moment. It's awkward, it's slow, it's filled with pauses and recalibration. But love that lasts respects the process even when the process looks unremarkable from the outside. Becoming the man before meeting the woman means accepting that love will meet you where you are, not where you pretend to be. And the version of me that eventually stands in front of her will be the result of choices I'm making now. Choices about discipline, about honesty, about emotional availability, about the kind of man I am when life doesn't feel inspiring. That realization brings weight, but it also brings clarity because it reminds me that love isn't something I'm waiting for. It's something I'm preparing for quietly, intentionally, one decision at a time. Becoming someone who doesn't just want love, but knows how to carry it.